Hello and welcome to an Envato Tuts Plus course. I'm Adi Purdila, and today we're going to animate some SVGs. More specifically, we're going to create this and this. We'll do that with a tool called SVGator, which allows you to import an SVG and then add animations to individual elements inside that SVG. Now, this tutorial is going to be split up in 3 parts. First, we'll have a quick look at SVGator, check out the UI and learn how to get around. Then I'll show you a very simple example of SVG animations so you can understand the basics of working with the app. And finally, we're going to animate a more complex SVG so you can truly understand what the app is capable of. Alright, first things first, what is SVGator? By the way, you can find it at SVGator.com. It's an online SVG animator tool, and it's super easy to use. It doesn't require any coding skills, and it's also cross-platform, so you can basically use it because it's in the browser. You can use it on Mac, Windows, Linux, wherever you want. Let me just start with this. This is a paid product. And although you can get a free trial, eventually you would have to pay either $18 or $12 a month, depending on your subscription model. But as I said, there is a free trial, so you can try it out, see if it's a good fit for you and what it is that you're doing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and log in. If you have an account, you can go ahead and log in with that, or you can create one really simple. I'm gonna log in with my Google account. And when you get to this stage, you basically have access to all of your projects. This is a project that's provided by default with SVGator, so you can see what it's all about. You can import a new project. We'll do that really soon here. Once you hover on a project, you have the ability to download this as an SVG, to edit, to duplicate, or to delete it altogether. And you can also find information about the project itself, like what is the canvas size and what is the file size. Now, let's jump into this project so we can have a quick look at the UI behind this. As you can see, it's pretty simple. Here on the bottom, we have the timeline and the list of elements that are placed on the timeline. Right in the middle, we have a preview, and we can click these buttons to check out the animation. It loops on and on and on. On the left, we have the actual elements of the SVG, and below those are the animators or the transformations that you can apply to any of these elements. On the right side here, we have a simple sidebar that allows us to choose between a dark and a light background, and also we get a code manager that shows us the SVG code. So you can go ahead and grab this, edit the SVG if you prefer to do so, but since this is a super easy to use tool, we won't be needing that. So the way it works is very simple. You import your SVG, you make your changes by adding animations, and then you can save it to your projects, or you can export it directly as an SVG. Now, let's go ahead and create a simple animation. To demonstrate, I went over to Envato Elements, where I found this icon set, and I plan on animating this icon. I want to make these cogs spin, all right? So I went ahead and downloaded the icon set. I have it opened here in Illustrator. Next, I'm going to select the icon that I want, export it. I'm going to export it as an SVG, hit export, and I have it right here. Currently, it's a static SVG. It doesn't do anything, but we're going to animate it. So let's go ahead and open it in SVGator. We're going to go back to our projects, and then I'm going to hit import new. I'm going to select my SVG. In here I can see the size of my canvas. If I want to, I can change this by manually inputting values. And in the Elements panel, I have all my layers and all of my groups. Currently, these are not named, but if you want to name them, it's really simple. Just make sure you do that before you export it as an SVG. So you would go to Illustrator or Sketch or whatever software you're using to export that to an SVG, and you simply name those groups or layers in any way that you want. And in fact, that will make it super simple later on in SVGator to find the elements that you're looking for. In my case, it's a very simple example, so I don't need to do that. You can select individual groups or elements from this list here, or you can click on them directly on the canvas here. And you can also choose to hide individual elements just to figure out which is which. Now, let's say I want to animate first this cog, right, which is path 01. I hit the plus sign, and this has been added to my timeline. Then I need to select an animator for it. So the available animators are position, rotate, scale, and opacity. In my case, I want to rotate it, so I'm going to hit rotate while having my elements selected. Hit rotate, and you can see the animator name here. I can select a custom easing. By default, it's set to linear, but I can choose from any of these four. And then I can set the properties for the animation. But first, I need to set some keyframes. To add a keyframe, simply click this button here, and it's going to add a keyframe to my timeline. And a keyframe is basically a point where certain properties change. So in this keyframe, I start at like the 0 position. But then I'm going to move my cursor over to the very end, and I'm going to add another keyframe. And here, I'm going to say make one turn 360 degrees. Or actually, if you use the turns here, you can simply specify a number. Or you can input the 360 value directly, and it's going to default to one turn. So now, if I click the play button, that cog will simply go on and on and on. It's going to rotate indefinitely. Now, let's say that I want to also rotate this one. I select it, I add it to my timeline, I add the rotate animator, and then I specify where it starts. Maybe I want this to start like at the 1 second mark. Right? I can add a keyframe here, and I want it to end at the 3 second mark. I add a keyframe there. And let's say I only wanted to spin like maybe 90 degrees. Okay? So now when I go back and hit play, this happens. But usually, of course, you would want the animation to go on and on forever on both elements. So what I'm going to do is simply move this keyframe back to the starting point, and I'm going to hit this one, and I'm going to change this to 1 rotation as well. You can also do negative values, and it's actually going to spin the other way around, like this. Now, if you want to change the duration of the animation, simply click this icon, and you can choose the duration here. Maybe I want this over, I don't know, 5 seconds. And there are certain options for the animation. You can choose it to loop, so to go on and on and on forever. And you can also animate it on mouse over. In my case, these are the options that I want. Now I'm going to move the keyframes to the 5-second mark because I did change the overall duration. And I'm going to hit save. And I'm going to export it as, let's say, spinning cogs. Hit save. So now if I'm going to open that in a preview, it looks like this. I can also open it in my browser. And this is the final result. So that's the simple way of animating an SVG using SVGator. Now, obviously, SVGs can be really simple like this one, or really complex, like when you have huge illustrations. Let's take a look at a more complex example. For this example, I went to Envato Elements again, and I found these very nice flat illustrations of the country landscape. And what I did was I combined this illustration with this illustration. I basically got rid of the tree, and instead of the tree, I got the windmill. So the result is something like this. And I made this in Illustrator, and I made sure all of my elements that needed to be animated are grouped properly. So for example, I want to animate this balloon, I want to animate the clouds, and I also want to animate the windmill. I want to make this spin basically, so I made sure this is a group. I didn't overcomplicate myself with naming the layers, but what I'm going to do is simply go to File, Export, Export As. I'm going to select SVG. I'm going to select Use Artboards, All, Custom Scenery.svg, Export, and under SVG Options, Styling is going to be Inline Style. Font, convert to outlines. We don't have any font, but just in case. Images, we can hit Preserve. And then make sure you uncheck Minify. Because Minify will get rid of all the groups and IDs, and we don't want that. We want to keep our groups intact. So I'm going to hit OK, and that has been exported right here. Custom Scenery.svg. All right, now we're going to head back to SVGator, Import New. We're going to select Custom Scenery. It's going to give us a warning that our SVG is too complex, but we can still work with it. It's just telling us that because we might have a performance issue. And on the Elements side here, we can see all of our groups. Right here is our balloon, and we have the individual clouds, and also we have the windmill. All right, let's check it out here. Right, that's our group. That's the one that we want to spin. So let's actually start here. I'm going to add it to the timeline, and I'm going to add a rotation to it. Let's say that our animation goes on for 20 seconds, and let's loop it. So I'm going to add a keyframe here, and a keyframe here at 20 seconds. And here it's going to make one full turn. Yeah, it's slow going. Then what else do I want? I want these clouds to kind of move in the background, right? So I'm going to select the cloud. I'm going to find it right here in my list. I'm going to add it to the timeline. I'm going to add a position to it. Now the position initially, I want this cloud to go from right to left. So initially, I'm going to position its X value somewhere like -300, or actually the other way around, like 400. And that should position it somewhere around here. And actually, excuse me, I had the cursor set at the very end. Let me do that. And let me change this bit to -400. And you can see it moved here, maybe a bit more, -450. to get it completely out of the picture, right? So now go back, play, and we're gonna see our cloud slowly moving from right to left. Okay, let's do the same for the other clouds. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on here. And slowly and surely, those clouds are moving in their correct positions. And when it gets to the end, it just starts back up again. Now let's also make our balloon move, right? So our balloon is part of this group. Yes, it is. So we're going to add it to the timeline. I'm going to collapse the rest of these so it's a little bit clearer what I'm doing. And for the animators, let's add a position. Oops, excuse me. Select this, add position, add a keyframe, and let's say that I want it to be set out to the right, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, something like that. And also, let's push it down a little bit. And let's say I'm gonna go here, add another keyframe. And let's say I want it to go, I don't know, to 150 maybe. And 0. And maybe add another one here. Let's say I want it to go to 50 and minus 30 to go up a little bit, and then all the way down here to the to the end of our animation. I want it to go to like minus 300 and 0 to go back to its original value. So let's go back. And actually I realized that I shouldn't be seeing this because the animation loops. So let's push it further in and let's check it out. And because we changed the X and Y values of the keyframes, the balloon now goes up and down as well as left and right. All right, and when it reaches the end, it just comes back. Of course, you can fine-tune these. You can add more transformations, like for example, opacity to make it transparent, or scale to go from large to small, or vice versa. It's really up to you how you want to use this. Just a quick mention, if you have an SVG file with more than 300 elements, you cannot use it with SVGator. It's not supported. I don't know if they're gonna support it in the future or not, but for now, you need to use relatively simple elements. I'm kind of pushing the envelope here with this illustration. In fact, it did give me that warning when we first started, but in the end, it works out pretty good. Now, once you're done, you simply hit export SVG and then use it wherever you want in your app, website, wherever that is. And that's a quick look at SVGator. Definitely a very handy and simple to use tool for animating SVGs. What do you think about this? Do you like it? Have you used it? Maybe if you have, you can share some of your creations with us. Let us know down in the comments. Well, thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I'm Adi Pordila. Until next time, take care.